Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to Straight Talk. It's a special tonight. It's a Wednesday night, so that means it's right out of kilter. And also, there's only one panellist. And, let me introduce him. It is my good work colleague, who somehow I managed to persuade to come and work for Family First, and that is Simon O'Connor. How are you, Simon?
I am doing very well, Bob. I'm going to try and recenter myself for you. I'm actually going to move. Hey, I'm moving to the
lovely.
right. That works for me.
Yeah. I thought you were supposed to be right of centre. And in fact, we were slightly late just starting because you're sort of doing some family first activity as we speak, aren't you? You're looking after family members.
Yeah, actually, you catch me up north in Whangarei. So my dad's in very poor health, unfortunately. So Rachel and I have come up to be with him. So if you're the praying type listening into this, keep my dad, Rory, in your prayers. But we're up here. But the great thing is, Bob, you have well equipped me. You're a smart man. I've got all the necessary equipment, so I've got no excuse not to set up to do this interview and discussion with you.
Okay, and just out of interest, there was a memo that I was supposed to send to you with kind of a warning about what I might ask you. Did you get that? Because I tried to send it to the wrong address.
Well, my suspicion is, being a former politician, you probably have sent me something, but it's probably different to what you've got in your hand right now. Or maybe that's what I did to you.
Yeah. Well, we are here for the next hour, and the exciting thing is that we're going to take questions from the floor. And so if you would like to ask either Simon or me or both of us a question, then you just need to go to either our YouTube account, Family First NZ, or to the Family First Facebook page. Those are the two where you can make the comment. You may be watching it on Simon's page, you may be watching it on my page, you may be watching it on LinkedIn. But if you want to make a comment or ask a question, then please go to Family First NZ Facebook or go to YouTube, our YouTube account. Okay, well, so what we've got, Simon, is...
Bob, I think it's important to say, if you're a Green MP, we'd appreciate you not coming across to our studios and shirt fronting us. Just do what Bob said. So just an encouragement to Green MPs to just stay seated.
Yeah, and speaking of which, we're both going to be speaking in Wellington on Saturday at this big function that they've tried desperately to shut down. I mean, I've already been cancelled once, and I'm pretty sure you've been cancelled, so I'm not quite sure what they're trying to achieve.
Well, it's a sad irony with a lot of the progressives, be they on the left or right, or certainly in those of the self-proclaimed trans movement. Because this conference on Saturday is called Inflection Point, and actually a whole lot of middle New Zealand speakers, a number of women, people who have been involved with the empath files and so forth, who just want to talk about the questions around gender identity. But as we know, that's too much for many of the woke and the progressives. And so they're trying to, as you've noted, they're trying to cancel the event. They're trying to protest the event. And I was saying to Rachel on the way up, I said, isn't it ironic? These guys will all be wearing their pink T-shirts against bullying on Friday, and then we'll come along to Wellington on Saturday, and through intimidation and harassment, bullying and abuse, we'll try to shut down a conversation primarily led by women, actually. So, yeah, you and I are there, but a conversation primarily led by women. So maybe these guys will learn something on their Pink Friday anti-bullying, whatever it is.
Well, the other irony about the conference is that actually there's quite a few people speaking who are from the LGBT community who still believe that you're born male and you're born female and still believe in privacy and safety for women. Actually, I do want to show you, I did tweet. Can you just chuck up that tweet? I just tweeted this earlier tonight because Wellington City Council were thinking about shutting it down. And I said, look, at no point have we ever attacked a trans meeting or a rally. We haven't brought loudspeakers, loud sirens. We haven't threatened or intimidated. We haven't tried to shut down meetings. We challenge ideas and ideologies with research and reasoned debate. So who is attacking whom, Wellington councillors? Who is denying the right to free speech? And, I guess that's the irony that I find, is that those that demand tolerance and diversity and inclusion are probably the worst at practicing it. What am I missing?
Well, I don't think you're missing anything, actually. I mean, that contradiction, that hypocrisy is it's quite a hallmark actually of many on the progressive or woke side. They are more frequently than not the very things they accuse others of being. So when they decry people, fascists. So, am I allowed to say that? I probably am. Fascist is one of the go-to words these days. The irony is, and sad irony and hypocrisy is, they're the ones acting like that. They're thuggish, violent against anyone who opposes them. They seek to shut things and discussions down. They seek to intimidate various groups. And you also highlighted it really well. They talk a big game. What is it? The DEI, diversity, inclusion,
equity,
and all of this.
Inclusion, yeah.
Yeah, but never for people they disagree with. It's just crazy, Bob. But look, the great thing is, sorry, you got me on a soapbox. The great thing is,
this hour's going to go fast. I can tell.
That's right. Yeah, I think the great thing is most people see through it. They really do. They're just unfortunately scared. And if I might, probably next week, we're putting up a new podcast on Family Matters where I sit down with Sal Grover. So she's the founder of the Giggle app for women in Australia and is now being dragged through court because on this woman's only app, she's been forced to bring biological men in. And she talks a lot about how people are in agreement but scared. And then how do we break through that fear?
Yeah, and I mean, it is a fantastic name for a case. Giggle is the name of the app for women, and Tickle is the name of the transgender guy who wants to be a woman. And so it's Tickle versus Giggle in court. I mean, imagine being the bailiff reading that out at the beginning. All stand for Tickle versus Giggle. You sort of wonder, Judge Judy or something like that.
Well, Sal is an ex-screenwriter. She spent time in the United States, Hollywood, doing screenwriting, and as she says on the podcast, so we've done the record, just an excellent man whose name begins with G is doing some post-production work on it. But she points out you couldn't have made up that name, Giggle versus Tickle, had you tried, but yet here it is.
Well, speaking of G, Gordon's actually here in the studio. He's actually producing as we speak, and Ken is monitoring our social media. So the crew's actually here. I've made them do some overtime. I might have to give them, I was going to give them the 3rd of June off, which I think is King's birthday. So I'm pretty generous like that. Now, I am looking down a little bit, and it's not being rude, Simon, or to the viewers. I am monitoring the comments that are coming through. And there have been quite a few already. Let's just check them. Lee says, thrilled you have joined, Bob. Simon, I used to enjoy your chats when you were in Parliament. Actually, there we go, segue. They can still enjoy your chats. Tell us about your new program.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm doing with Bob and the Family First team is every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m., if you will, Lee, I'm recreating that live chat that I used to have in Parliament, but we now call it Solid Ground. That's the new brand. Nice. Oh, look at that.
Nice production,
it's a double
Gordy.
Entendre. So Solid Ground, obviously a coffee reference for those who are aficionados, but also the solid ground of having good values, ethics, and perspectives. So 8 a.m. every Tuesday morning, I come on live across all those platforms, have a brief chat, but like tonight, take your questions. So encouraging those on tonight, fire through your questions. Ask Bob and I those burning questions. And if you've got really difficult ones, ask Bob.
Yeah, right. Actually, so New Zealand Kiwi says, and once again, a great segue to advertise Family Matters next week. Have we had any updates on the Giggle saga, apart from the fact that somebody wet their pants being giggled, which, often you do? Have we had any updates?
So a little bit of an update will come through the podcast, but I'm not going to hold back New Zealand Kiwi. That long and short, the case is complete. They're now waiting, Sal thinks, between 2 and 5 months for a judgment. And at this point, it's perhaps too early to tell which way it goes. I'm no lawyer, nor is she. And to be honest, from my side, I don't understand Australian law. Some would argue how much I knew of New Zealand law. But long and short, judgment is in process, bro. 2 to 5 months.
Well, our Supreme Court case took a year, so they do take their time. It will be an interesting one because it'll have a flow-on effect in New Zealand. Susie says you two will be a force to reckon with. In fact, I think we signed the employment contract on May the 4th, so May the 4th be with you. Here's an interesting one. James says...
Isn't it that Siths always deal with in twos? There's always two?
Yeah, something
isn't that.
James says, both of you, do you know about the USS Liberty, Lavone affair, King David Hotel bombing, IDF going into Palestine and blasting porn over the airways and shooting kids? That was for you, Simon. He forgot to put the word Simon at the start of that question.
I know, well...
I know none of those.
Is always I'm aware historically of some of them. I mean, the King David Hotel was in the 1940s, where it was a hotel particularly frequented by the British, who then had the mandate in Palestine. It was a major bombing by, I've forgotten what the names of the Jewish groups were at the time. I don't believe the last one. I'm afraid to say, James, that doesn't accord with the information and intelligence that I have.
Okay. Sam says, nice to have you on, Simon, which is pretty rude because he didn't say it was nice to have me on. Okay, Sam, I forgive you.
I paid a lot of people to comment tonight, Bob, a lot of money.
Owen says inclusion is actually exclusion. That's true. And equity is inclusion, and diversity is delusion. Okay, let's get into some of the questions that we've got. So, Simon, this is just so people can get to know you a little bit better. And the first question is, what made you get into politics?
Power. No, only kidding.
The cups of tea.
Yeah, well, actually, I've got my little cup of tea. I hope, was this going to work on camera? I'm at my sister's house, but this is the
nice
cup she's given me tonight.
Actually, I meant to grab my cup as well. Yeah, you keep talking, and I'm just going to grab my cup. Fair
enough. So look, I've always had a background of service. So my whole life, really, since I was particularly 17 and left home, has always been about serving people in different ways. So some of you may or may not know, I actually trained as a Catholic priest. Some do know this, some don't. Did that for 9 years. And why I mention that in relation to politics is you do a lot of training working with people. So prisons, homeless shelters, hospices, hospitals, people of the night who were, seminary was near K Road, talking to the girls and all of that. I mean, but long and short, a lot of service. And actually politics is about service. So actually shifting, if you will, from priestly life, never ordained, but for the sake of alliteration, from priestly life to political life wasn't all too difficult. So that, it was about service. And that's probably one of the reasons a lot of people used to say to me, well, why don't you become prime minister or something? And needing the votes aside, it's not something I never really aspired to.
Right.
I'm not particularly ambitious. I just prefer to help people.
Okay. Now, this one has just come. Oh, did that go? Yeah. Judith says, can you confirm at some point that the Unsilenced conference will go ahead for us out-of-towners so we can prep and get a ticket? Yes, it is definitely going ahead. And come and be part of it. I'm just trying to make sure I don't send through this. See, you were doing this on Monday, Simon, while you were talking without a break. So I was pretty impressed about this. I'm sort of struggling to do two things at one time. Here we go. Wendy says, have I got that? Yeah. Wendy says, I'm so nervous about tomorrow. Actually, it's Friday. And Pink Shirt Day. I reckon I'll get bullied by the teachers for not letting my son wear pink. What do I say to avoid making him get in trouble? My recommendation would be that if you don't feel that he's going to be treated and not bullied, ironically, on Anti-Bullying Day, then just don't send him, go and do a field trip to somewhere, because he'll probably learn more. If you think he won't get bullied, then send him along in any shirt he wants and just don't buy into it. Maybe give him some lines that he can just say that he believes that we should stand up against all bullying, but this Pink Shirt Day is only interested in one particular group. What would you say, Simon?
I'd echo that, but I'd also add if your son does go to school and does get bullied and harassed, take a note of that. Literally write yourself a note, get him to tell you what happened, and then go directly to the principal, complain to the board, basically kick up a stink. This stuff has to stop. Bob's nailed it. The bullying involved with the anti-bullying campaign is just terrible.
Yeah. Okay. And this one says, this is from Trina. She says they would make a great political party. I think that's referring to Gordon and Ken, our staffers. So that's
definitely,
nice.
Definitely. We could be the opposition, you and I.
Okay. And this one, I actually not sure about this. It says, hi, Bob and Simon. Any updates on the Bachelor TV1 defamation case? Another example of mainstream media. Oh, that's Julian Batchelor, who was doing the co-governance rallies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, look, I don't know, Daryl. Can't answer that one. So anyway,
I have to admit, I can't either. I have to. No. You've asked me a question, Bob. So this is reciprocal. It's quid pro quo here.
Well, who said that was the plan? I'm the boss, man. Gee, didn't you read your contract?
You participle? No, only kidding.
Okay, fire one. Fire your best shot.
You've been in Family First a long time. I mean, that goes without saying. You've celebrated significant anniversaries, but a lot of people are new to Family First or have been around a few years, but not from the start. So what led you? What was the catalyst for starting Family First? What was that moment? Why? I suppose that's the way. Why did you start Family First?
So I was doing breakfast radio on Radio Rima during 2002 to 2006. It was the time that dear Helen Clark was Prime Minister. And there was a lot of social engineering going on. There was decriminalising of prostitution. There was the anti-smacking law. There was civil unions. There was just a general sense that she wouldn't say grace when the Queen visited for an official function. And so there was a sense that a lot of what we would call conservative values were being rejected. And what I found when I was working on Radio Rima was that if ever I wanted my producer to find someone from the left-wing side who was pushing this agenda to speak, we really had no problems. But to find a conservative voice, it was very difficult. And at the time, it was really only the Maxim Institute and some pro-life groups that we really could come to. And of course, then there were my friends like Bruce Logan and Alexis Stewart and Michael Reid, some of them who are now on Straight Talk. And so I just felt that there needed to be another voice. Basically, my season at Rima came to an end. I wasn't planning for that, but it did. And so I felt that it was time to do Family First. Started with a check for $3,000 from a dear friend down in the Hawke's Bay, and whose wife actually listened to Radio Rima all the time. So she was the one who told him to pay the check. And from there, 18 years on, we've got a staff of 8 now, and it's been an interesting ride, and we have just sought to be a conservative voice in a nation that we just think needs to hear some of those values and push back against the both the political and the media narrative that's very strong at the moment. Is that a B minus? Or a B plus? You reckon I'd get a B plus for that? Here's a good one. Oh, I'm trying to. Okay, hang on. I'll just get this one. View the queue. Here we go. Brad says conservative values are live and let live. Get a grip. Charming. What do you reckon, Simon? Live and let live. It's interesting because actually, let me just answer it. Liberals are the ones who love abortion. That's not live and let live. So, yeah. Anyway.
Good. No, that's brilliant. No, I was thinking for all my years of studying philosophy, I've never come across that definition of conservatism.
Live and let live. Okay.
No.
Maybe what the ACT Party says, but they're not social conservatives. They're fiscal conservatives. They're nowhere near social conservatism, which I think was a real eye-opener to voters, and especially when David Seymour turned up for Straight Talk and exposed his social liberal viewpoint. So,
Yeah, well, the problem with
mm,
that sort of social liberal or libertarian viewpoint is the world only is yourself, um, which means you ultimately end up very lonely, which is why so many are depressed and anxious. But
mm,
conservatism, without going too much on a segue, is based around community. It's a sense that there's many others around us, and we have a responsibility to them. And importantly, too, we can learn from others, and we can learn from history. So we're not starting from a blank slate every 5 seconds. We can sort of have a sense of what is right and true, and build
yeah.
from that, which is what I think gives us a great confidence. And also, if I might say, Bob, why people like yourself, and if I can include myself somewhat, we're not afraid
Mm.
to speak up for what's important. And so, going to segue straight off that. You've never let me onto a podcast, so you've told us why you started. What's been a
Hang
couple,
on.
one,
Hold
two,
on.
what's
I've
some of
only
your
asked
great?
you one. What are you doing?
I've been involved in politics.
Okay, hang on. I'll just check the. There's just a couple here. Yeah, the queue. Trina says, I used to listen to Rima all the time back then, Bob, when I was playing Amy Grant. Dog Backwards says, and then she shut down all the logging. Was it Helen Clark shut down all the logging, did she? Might be right. Shut down the, okay.
Yeah,
And now
before my
it's all
time in
logging and
politics,
no
I know
farming.
Jacinda shut down all the gas.
Okay, don't talk about gas around me. June said, excuse me, gentlemen, you are enjoying working together too much. I know, you should see the staff meetings. It's a riot. Susie says, wow, Simon, now I understand your commitment to our world. I miss your wonderful speeches in Parliament. So do I, actually. I'm glad you're here. I was the surest. I was the saddest, I think she means, that you lost in the election. However, you will serve us well again. Bob, I think you will do amazing things. You have so much in common, Yahoo. Yes, Parliament's loss was our gain. Ta-da. Tina says, do you, Bob or Simon, know what's going on with smart cities? Well, I live in Manarewa and it's not that smart. I've met some of the people. My family.
You've got to drive home tonight, just reminding you of that.
That's right. I'll go via, North Shore.
Ultra quickly, Tina. It's a concept driven by some. You'll sometimes heard around 15-minute cities as well. It's the idea that we all sort of can live very, very compactly, close together, and with very minimal impact on the world. So, talking to my stepkids who live in New York, for example, the concept actually can work quite well. High density. On every corner, there's a dairy and a laundromat, and within 15 minutes, you can move about easily and freely on public transport. Then you come to New Zealand, and it doesn't work so well. So there's rightful tension building that, ideas are one thing. Hey, can we improve our cities? But if it becomes a coercion, which often does tend to come from the progressive left, to force us to use public transport, to force us to do other things, now we're into quite a bit of trouble. And it won't surprise you that quite a number in the UN are quite keen on this idea, which should make us all a bit suspicious.
Okay, Cherie says, what's your thoughts on many schools taking away skirts and dresses and making their uniforms gender neutral? I'm writing a letter to our board, a Christian school, on why we need to keep girls and boys distinguishable, especially in this gender confused world. Well, I would encourage you to go to parentguide.nz. That's where we've uploaded our guide for parents as to how to tackle this issue, what the responsibilities of the schools are, what your rights are, how you can attend board meetings, questions you should be asking. It's interesting, I was just preparing for Saturday, and one of my messages is that actually this debate happened as long ago as about 2013, 2014, and I've got a couple of news clips that I was involved in on TV1 and TV3 News, and also some reports that we released, but nobody really was paying any attention, and nobody thought that it was an issue, and just thought, oh, it's just a few kids, and it's, it's nothing to do with us. And it's taken about 9 years for suddenly now people starting to sit up and see the problem, and so this uniform trend, and even the toilets and the changing rooms and the sports, actually started around 2015. And I'm sorry to say, actually, Simon, just thinking about that, that was during the key government.
Mm.
So the ideology has sneaked in undercover, which is what they do. That's what I keep saying to parents. You've got to be alert, and if there's a smoke screen in your ability to see what's going on at schools or in the curriculum, that's always a red flag, because that's how they sneak a lot of this stuff in. Anyway, what's your thoughts on the gender-neutral uniforms, Simon?
Yeah, well, I mean, the decision's up by school, and so importantly, as a parent, the school's meant to represent you. So yeah, rally other parents, because there'll be a lot of similar views, I'm sure. And Bob's right. Go along to the board meetings and present your case. I mean, ironically, and depending on how troublesome like me you want to be, of course, you can take the same philosophy that's been used at the moment around I should be allowed to express my identity however I want, that if your school does decide to go down the gender-neutral route, despite all your best encouragements and protestations, then just wear whatever you want, be it a skirt or shorts, and just breach the rules, so to speak, and just say, no, I'm just allowing my son or daughter to express themselves as they see fit and safe.
Well, I'm actually Scottish, so wearing a kilt. Yeah. Okay. And, you were going to, I'll let you ask a question if you want. Actually, sorry, just by the cup. So this is my cup, and it was given to me by my PA who was with me for 17 years, and we've finally let her retire, Denise. And see, it says there, search Google Best Boss, and look at that top result. Oh, isn't that nice? See? So anyway, bet you haven't got a cup like that. I've also got this cap. Jessica Dentova. Most people will know what that refers to. It was kind of like when everybody realised that maybe Jacinda and the media were in cahoots together. Right. Okay, your question, Simon.
By the way, this is actually sort of a segue into the question, because what I'm going to ask you was, what's been some of your great successes over your time leading Family First? But not to preempt it, but actually the Jessica Tova stuff was that incredible viral success. And I also have to add, because my wife will shoot me, but Rachel wanted me to remind you that she was one of your founding members or supporters all those years ago. I'm sure you haven't forgotten.
No, of course I haven't. That's why I'm very nice to her. Yes, there was a handful that invested in really not knowing what they were investing in. And, that's pretty humbling, because we really didn't know what Family First would be, but we quickly got into lots of media stuff, and it sort of grew from there. So what was the question?
What have the highlights been then?
Well, the interesting thing is that when we got to 10 years, we got out a whiteboard and decided to list up all our successes, and it was white because there were no successes. We'd lost the smacking debate, we'd lost the street prostitution debate because we sort of came in after the decriminalisation, and then there was the abortion debate, there was the euthanasia debate, there was the basically every debate we hadn't had much success on. Although, interestingly enough, probably the real turning point was the cannabis referendum, because totally against the odds and against very biased media, which we proved categorically, we won that. And that was almost a bit of a turning point for a lot of people to say, hey, look, we can turn up to these battles, and we can give reasoned debate and actually get New Zealanders across the line. But one thing that I realised that was when it came to debates, the gay marriage was the other debate as well. And that was a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of people got in behind that. And what I realised through all of that is that God doesn't call us necessarily to win. He calls us to speak truth. And we desperately need to speak truth into a culture that is trying to reject truth as much as possible. That's basically the definition of woke. It's rejecting biblical truth, biological truth, and it's agreeing with everything that's an alternative to that. And so during the gay marriage debate, I knew by the makeup of Parliament, not because you were in there, Simon, because I knew you'd be a good vote, but I knew that by the makeup of Parliament we were going to lose that debate. But for once, the media and all the cultural elite suddenly wanted to talk about marriage and how great it was. And so it was a chance for us to simply get out and talk about the truth about marriage, natural marriage, and the purpose and function of it. And so we were able to get involved in that debate. One of the funny things was that I knew the debate was coming, so we set up a website, protectmarriage.nz, and we had it all ready to go. And we were just waiting for the private members bill to be drawn, which was Louisa Wall's. And I was actually in Melbourne at the time, and I got a text saying, "Guess what? It's been drawn. All the controversial social engineering private members bills seem to get drawn out of the biscuit tin for private members bills." Simon, I'm not sure if you know what's behind that, but anyway. And so I flew back immediately from the conference I was at, and we launched protectmarriage.nz, and it gave them such a fright because suddenly there was this contrary voice and a contrary website arguing that we should defend traditional marriage. And so that website suffered, my understanding is that it's one of the largest denial of service attacks on a website. In fact, the company hosting it asked us to please take it away because it was affecting all their other clients. And so, and it was an example of where, look, we won't win every battle, but we at least need to show up. And we may not win every debate, but we need to speak the truth into the culture. So, yeah, that's been the victories. But there has been, like you say, the little ones. One of the other, the Jessica Thentova. The other one, I think, was the flying over the Women's World Cup at Eden Park, the banner saying, "What is a woman?" That I think had a lot of success as well. People like the sense of humour in that one. I think that's quite fun to do.
I was good. Well, you had the cannabis one too. You guys did some great work there.
Yeah. And at the same time, we were gutted because of the euthanasia issue, which we need to keep monitoring, and you're going to lead the charge on that for us, and the abortion issue as well. I mean, that was just horrific to, the week before we go into lockdown and they're passing a bill to kill the unborn child easier and more accessible. It was galling to watch, and especially for a new mother to be leading the country and pushing that bill. I think that's been one of the low points. Right, my question for you, so that I can just check some of these comments. What was your highlight and your low light during your time in Parliament?
Yeah, probably. I've always struggled with this question because there's so many things that went on. I mean, if in terms of highs, it probably is actually the near daily helping individuals. So, for me, there wasn't any particular amazing piece of law. I contributed to a lot in different ways, but actually the highlights for me were helping probably literally thousands of people over my 12 years, be it getting medical treatment here or overseas. In recent months, there was a report of actually helped the family of a defector get out of an authoritarian regime and come here safely to New Zealand. That's on the more dramatic end of things, but those for me were real highlights, and perhaps goes back to someone's earlier question around what drove me to politics. It's service. So, I never sought titles or arguably dramatic change. It was just loving, helping individuals. And there's some of the personal things. I got to Iraq, Afghanistan, Antarctica. I suppose those are more personal. Those are luxuries. Jumped out of the back of a C-130 with a parachute. So lots of cool things. The lowlights, look, there's obviously the particular debate. You touched on the abortion law. I mean, just a god-awful law in itself. As it rammed through, very disappointed. I suppose that's the overall disappointment. It was the same with euthanasia or conversion therapy, a whole lot of other areas. There's not as much thoughtful debate and discussion. It's probably that wider disappointment within the Parliament that actually a lot of people just form a camp early, on both sides, by the way, without necessarily thinking about the why. And putting it really crudely, the politicians in general are scared to engage. They're fearful, worried. So they just sort of, as I say, take up a position, then put up giant fences, sort of no, until there's the vote. But around a lot of that, and the abortion law is a perfect example, is all the false, bordering on corrupt reporting that just misrepresents things terribly. I remember my colleague at the time, Hareti Hapango, being harassed by media and others when she said that the new abortion law allows abortion up to birth. She was pillorying. She was completely correct. It's there in black and white. She wasn't saying it will happen, that it should happen. She was just making an observation. But she was mocked, derided, insulted. I had other adjectives here. And that's really disappointing. And unfortunately, it continues. There's so much misrepresentation that occurs. And that was, if you will, a low light, a sad element of sort of political life.
And I think you actually put up a private member's bill to explicitly ban born alive abortion, and that was voted against by politicians, wasn't it? I mean, they could have clarified it in the law, but they just couldn't bring themselves to do it.
No, which was just an absolute shocker because, one of the big arguments is that pre-birth it's not a life, post-birth it is. And you go, well, okay, well, the baby is born. And by the way, it does happen. It does happen.
Yep.
Infrequent, but it does happen. And yet, oh, no, the baby can still be left to die, which it is. I mean, it's just the whole thought is horrifying. But, there was so little engagement during that debate. Another colleague of mine put forward an amendment to allow anesthesia to be administered for unborn babies. I think in general, or maybe it was past a certain point, but long and short, that was voted down. It was just awful, absolutely awful.
Yep. Okay, here's a very good one. Jody says, so great to have Simon O'Connor on the team, as Bob has gained no real influence with politicians over the duration of Family First. Well, Bob, please stand aside so Simon can now take over the leadership of Family First and lead us forward. Thank you, Jody. I feel the love.
You do have the influence.
I think that's my wife, actually.
Yeah.
I think that was Tina that wrote that. Oh, yeah. You're gone.
No, I mean, you do have influence. The fact that, every politician knows Family First. They know your name. They might not always engage, but they know you well enough to actively to choose to ignore you if that's what they do. And there's a real power in that. There really is.
Yeah. Okay. Lee says the biggest debate is ahead of us right now. I'm not quite sure what that's referring to. Lee, tell us what that is, just to help us. I've just got a text saying that Tina, my wife, has cooked some bacon for me for when I get home. Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, awesome. Brad says, arrogant, Bob. There we go. I have a lot of fans on tonight. This is awesome. Christine says, those debates you mentioned were, I think this is from when I was talking, you were pretty significant, one thing at a time, each lowering the moral bar, but together significantly lowered. It feels like there is a direct correlation between dysfunctional family and dysfunctional government. I thought you were going to say dysfunctional family and social problems, because we've actually documented that in terms of the more the family breaks down, the higher the risk of child abuse, child poverty, imprisonment. But you say the link between dysfunctional family and dysfunctional government. I think, Simon, what Kirstine is saying is, and Brendan is saying, is that politicians are dysfunctional. Surely not.
Probably true. Are we any more dysfunctional than the general public? I think the basic premise is right. If family is the most fundamental or basic building block of relationships, then if that's breaking down, then it's no surprise that other structures, relationships are also going to falter. So those tensions we now see in civil society, the tensions within politics, it really shouldn't be a surprise. So I think it's actually a really insightful comment.
Okay. R says, hi, do you think Tanya Unkovic's of New Zealand First, the single-sex unisex toilet bill will be voted and passed if it gets pulled out of the biscuit tin. Interesting you asked that. We just released some polling today, which the media are all trying to ignore. And they are saying that the polling showed that it's about a 2-to-1 in favour of the bill, of those who had an opinion on it. Now, we put that out as a media release. It's been whispers from the media on that particular one. So will it be passed? Simon, I think you might be able to answer that. I don't think ACT will support it, and I suspect National won't either.
That's my sense at the moment. It's always hard to tell until, of course, it is drawn out. It's one of these things. A lot of politicians will just avoid discussing it, and understandably to a degree. But once it's pulled out, it would clarify. But if I was a betting man, I would be very surprised if National voted for it, or Labor.
They wouldn't want a discussion on it, would they?
No, I mean, Labor won't vote for it. Greens won't vote for it. I can't see ACT voting for it. I mean, they might do some funny backflips to try and support it, but I think National would be very... I can't speak for National, I'm out now, but when I look at it, I don't see the National team backing this.
And I mean, that's the interesting thing, is that while National aren't liberal, they're not pushing a lot of this social engineering. They don't stop it, try to fix it. In fact, they shy away from it and just sort of let it happen and say, well, nothing to do with us. Actually, and that just leads into this question from Daryl, which is quite an interesting one. Simon, while in Parliament, did you experience aggressive or bullying behaviour over your conservatism? They'd be scared of you, Simon. They'd be shaking in their boots as you came down the hallway.
Not from other MPs. I mean, there was robust discussions and debate, but I would never describe that as aggressive or bullying. Not that I can. I mean, very disparaging. Look, the likes of the ACT Party, and many on the Conservative side. I mean, you were talking about David Seymour's talk with you during the election. I mean, an infantile, aggressive behaviour or dismissiveness that comes from him. But no, in general, no. In some of the public, yes. There was the odd death threat and so forth, which it's sad to say you sort of get used to. But no, and I have to say, in general, the relationship between MPs is actually rather respectful by and large, which is why sort of the Julianne Genter behaviour has really sort of made MPs sit up, because even though you might have fervently different views, most MPs are quite respectful to one another.
Yeah, okay. And just this one says, Charmaine says, Bob deserves a knighthood. You know what? I would never get a knighthood because I'd be dead scared that the Governor-General would trip just as she's about to put the sword, and accidentally chop my shoulder off or something. So no, sorry, not going to do that. Right, next question for you, Simon. Oh, actually, this is quite relevant, just based on that very supportive comment earlier on. What was the view of Family First within Parliament?
Well, but look, by and large, good, actually. I mean, from the positive point is that most people understood who you were. They knew who you were. They know what you stand for. And that makes actually a big, big difference. There's so many other groups and lobbying organisations and charities that no one's ever heard of. And, I remember in my first years, you'd get these different reports and so forth that would cross your desk, and you go, there's an organisation for this? Like, really? Whereas, everyone knows who Family First is. And for a lot of us, respected the research. It was useful. It was informative. So lots of positives there. But let's not over-egg things. There were a lot of people as well who detest the values that the likes of Family First holds. And we were talking about it earlier today. There will be some MPs who literally will have instructed their staff to pick up a Family First report or an email or a letter and just bin it. They just don't want to know or see it. But I would still make the argument, and that's why you've been effective, is they know you're there. And they can almost anticipate the arguments, and that's a success in itself.
Yeah, and one of my great allies. In fact, he was one of the first people I went to meet when I set up Family First, and that was Garth McVicker at the Sensible Sentencing Trust, just to talk about strategy, because, he was making a lot of impact. And one of the things he said is always get to the point where even when they bring in something idiotic and stupid, the first thing they're going to do is, how is a certain group going to challenge us on this? And I think hopefully politicians, when they're introducing a lot of these things, they're sort of saying to themselves, okay, how's Family First going to push back on this? For example, the Easter trading bill. They're wanting to liberalise trading laws around Easter. And interestingly enough, and we've got a Family Matters coming out on this shortly because the first reading is coming up, the obsession seems to be just the right to drink alcohol and not to have to eat food while you're drinking the alcohol. And of course, the same argument could be used for liberalising shopping around Anzac Day and Christmas as well, based on the same argument. So, I'm hoping that politicians sort of say to themselves, okay, well, we're going to push this, but how's Family First going to react to this? So I don't know if that's happened, but hopefully it does to a certain respect. I'm going to throw this question at you because it's a goodie. Another question for Simon. See, I'm just avoiding you asking me questions. Who are the main three politicians you respected the most and why? I didn't give you a warning about this one, but it's very good.
Well, she's on mine today, and it won't surprise you, Bob, because we've talked about her, but it might surprise some of your listeners. Actually, one of the ones I respected was Larissa Wall. And you go, oh my God, that's right, you're fired. But actually, Larissa and I got on very well on one topic, which was China. But why I respected her is, while she and I were diametrically opposed on the issues of marriage, conversion therapy, abortion, euthanasia, we could talk about it. We could debate and discuss it. And I suppose it's also recognizing, without getting too deep, we recognized in each other that the same passion, the passion we had each of our topic or our views was the same. It's just that they went in different directions. Obviously she thinks she's right, I think I'm right, yada, yada. But it was that mutual recognition that, okay, I think this, you think that, but we both feel that same passion. And the question of China, it overlapped. And we worked very cooperatively together and still do. So, she's someone I've had a huge amount of time for. The other was someone like Alfred Naro, I think, a man who wore his politics and his faith and his values very clearly on his sleeve and spoke incredibly confidently. I think that he was an amazing individual. And then the third one, and see, now the problem with this question is there's 100 plus MPs who are going, oh, he didn't mention me. But the other would be Bill English, very humble, very quietly spoken, but my God, what an intellect. Which is a great reason. It's a great pity, actually, that he wasn't Prime Minister for longer. The man, I think, had a real heart for people and probably one of the most formidable, insightful intellects in the Parliament, certainly when I was there.
Yeah. Okay. I think I was going to say that approach to Louisa Wall, I think, is true. For example, in the Easter trading, we tend to side with the unions and Labor Party MPs on that particular one. And on alcohol, the whole area around advertising and availability, we tend to side with the Greens on that one. So, in fact, we agree to disagree on issues, but on the ones we do agree. And that, I think, is the interesting thing about this conference on Saturday around the gender ideology, is that there's a whole lot of people coming together who will disagree on a number of issues, and yet on this particular issue. In fact, when we gathered together the coalition for the Say Nope to Dope, that was basically the first thing I said to the group, because we had groups from all across the spectrum on education. We had social workers, we had people involved in addiction counselling and church leaders. And I said, look, whatever the other issues are, can we put them to the side? We are here simply to say that we want to say nope to dope, that legalising cannabis will be bad for the country. And, we were just able to focus on that. And if people came to us and said, oh, you've got such and such a group here and they think this about gay marriage or abortion, and we would say, yep, they're entitled to hold that view, but on this issue, we are locking arms. And yeah, I think that's a mature way to do it, but it seems to be less and less common as we go. Here's an interesting one for you, Simon. What's your opinion of Brian Tamaki's recent protest action in relation to gender issues?
Yeah, given this some thought, it's not my cup of tea. I actually don't think it helps for two reasons. I don't think generally protest action or dramatic activity actually helps. I think more often than not, it backfires. So it doesn't matter if it's Brian and Rainbow Crossings or it's Extinction Rebellion blocking motorways. Generally, I think that people get annoyed. The second is you lose the moral high ground very swiftly. So the next time someone decides to turn up to protest Destiny Church, it's going to be very hard for Brian and friends to argue against that sort of a quid pro quo. So I'm much more I'm not really a protest person. And if you're going to protest, I remember doing it years ago around, oh God, you put me on the spot. What was it? Some electoral law reform. That's right,
yeah, Electoral Finance Act. That's right. That was my first march that I was ever involved in.
That's, I would argue, is constructive. You just walk down a street, we're fine. We're not defacing anything. We're not screaming at anyone. So, yeah, I don't support it. I don't think it's the right way forward. And in some ways, it just then endorses the ever-increasing and pathetic protest behaviours we're seeing by a whole lot of other groups at the moment.
Yeah. My wife says that she just texts to say I look handsome, so that's nice. Has your wife text to say that to you, Simon?
I just know she thinks it all the time. I don't need to be reminded.
So humble. Wendy says, just announced the UK government is set to ban gender ideology in schools. That's a win. Yes, that's correct. That was published today, a decision. And they're also going to ban sex education for under 9-year-olds. So there's things happening in the UK that are setting a precedent around the world. And Ricky says the same about Health to Bob, as they tax the crap out of smoking, but don't tax the crap out of are we allowed to say crap on this? Out of fast foods and alcohol, which costs the country more than any other health issue. Have you been reading my scales, Ricky, or something? What are we getting at here? Okay, we'll just get rid of that one. Okay, oh, here we go. Someone's given me a tricky one. Where is it? Yeah, we're just about out of time. Trina says, question for Bob, what are the 3 biggest changes you believe are essential to New Zealand going forward? Strong marriages, no Green Party, and I'm tempted to say cheaper KFC, but I won't. Church attendance. Yeah, returning to Judeo-Christian values, because I think those 3 things have caused a huge amount of grief, which is left-wing parties generally, especially the current left-wing parties, because my view is that Parliament, whereas we used to have kind of the centre, and then you had parties on the left and you had parties on the right, the parties on the right have actually become very liberal in social conservative issues. So the whole of Parliament has shifted to the left, and that's why we're finding that so many bills are being defeated so strongly, because even the parties that we would expect to be socially conservative aren't. And a lot of people thought ACT are socially conservative. They're not. National Party is losing its social conservatism. And New Zealand First, I think, got a lot of the vote because of that social conservatism. The question is whether they deliver on it. To their credit, this bathroom bill is the start of it. I know that everybody is saying, okay, what's happening about RSE? Why is it still in schools? And parents still need to be alert to that. Part of the problem, and Simon, you may be able to advise us a little bit more on this, is that part of the problem is that New Zealand First will be dealing with the Minister of Education, who is Erica Stanford, who is probably a supporter of RSE in schools in some way. may not like some of the extreme gender things, but is probably happy with RSE in general. So therefore, you've got this interesting clash, but it's in the coalition agreement. So theoretically, it's supposed to be reviewed and gone and replaced. So watch this space. We'll certainly be monitoring it. What would you say on that, Simon? Anything to add on that?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the coalition agreement stuff, often there's not timelines. So like with the RSE stuff, New Zealand First is clearly keen on getting rid of it. I suspect there's mixed views within National. I don't expect there's anyone waving a banner saying, hey, absolutely it must stay. But I doubt there's a huge, huge push to do it like right now. So it's always the thing to look for in politics is where's the wiggle room. So they've said, we'll get rid of it. But didn't say they're going to do it today or tomorrow. It could take months. Could be something as simple. It could actually happen. It could be a full removal. It could be that it's revised in some way, or it's given a slightly different name. So I think it's just a matter of continuing to ask questions, and just to keep the pressure on. And I might just add to throw. It's sort of a fourth point to yours, Bob. Is it to Trina's question? One of the things we've got to have to do as a society is actually respect ourselves and our society. The constant undermining and attacking of the West, liberal, democratic, Judeo-Christian values bring us the freedoms and the economy and the wealth that we have. And yet day after day after day, we just see, particularly those on the left, but certainly those who could be defined progressive, are just constantly undermining us. And now you see lunatics on the street supporting terrorists in the Middle East as if they're some amazing country. And you go, are you idiots? Which, of course, they are. We've got to stop undermining Western values. And that's Judeo-Christian, but it's also our wider democratic values. It's something we need to be holding, not trying to rip apart.
Okay, we've got 2 minutes. So a couple of fun questions. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
I actually thought about being an army officer, but then I chose the priesthood.
Okay, I wanted to be a traffic cop because I like the thought of controlling traffic, but then I wanted to be a radio announcer. Schools you attended?
I went to little Catholic schools in Whangarei, so I never stood a chance.
Okay. I went to all Papatoe schools in South Auckland, so that was fun.
Why do you support Liverpool Football Club?
Because in 1971, when I was 8, I watched the FA Cup and Liverpool beat somebody, and I fell in love with them. So I've indoctrinated my kids, my wife. There's just no choice in our house. Favourite food?
Ooh, steak. Love a nice steak.
Yeah, same. And I can't stand it when you go to restaurants now and you order a steak and it just comes out really mediocre. And I'm thinking to myself, I could have cooked this way better. Yeah, I agree. Favorite movie of all time?
Ooh, probably Shawshank Redemption, actually. That's a great one.
Okay, Sound of Music for me. My grandmother took me to see it when I was probably 4 or 5 in Queen Street. Made me walk on the street side of the footpath because she said that's what the man does. Walks closer to the traffic, so if car careers off the road, it hits the man first, not the woman. She taught me some excellent values like that. Just 2 more. Something that viewers won't know about you.
I'm actually incredibly practical. So I think a lot of people think that I'm a talker and a thinker, for want of a better term. But actually, I'm quite handy around the house, renovations, plumbing, roofing, you name it. I've built chicken coops, I've renovated inside the house, I've been doing work outside, including on the roof. Yeah, I'm quite a practical fella.
Okay. For me, I was top goal scorer for the over 40s team about 6 years ago. Scored the most goals of any player in the club. And it's been all downhill from there. And finally, a job that you did that viewers won't know about. Because you've already mentioned the priesthood, so...
I spent a lot of time pumping fuel. One of my first jobs out of school was working at the Kensington Shell Station. I would spend many hours pumping gas. in Whangarei.
Yeah.
I'll never forget one day a lady pulling onto the forecourt, smoke billowing out of the engine, and leaps out of her car and runs over to me. I think my car's going to explode. Can you have a look at it? It's like, oh yeah, sure. I mean, all it was oil burning on the manifold, but I've always loved it. Oh, my car's going to blow up. Do you mind going and having a look? Oh, yeah, why not?
Yeah. Okay, my job was I used to be the Friday night DJ at Paradise Ice Skating Rink in Glen Innes. Now, for anybody who lives in Auckland and is around my age, they probably at some stage in their life went to Paradise Ice Skating Rink, and that's where I sort of started my love for being a DJ and doing the yeah, that's right, the slow. Well, you had to do that anyway because we had the vinyls in those days. You didn't have cassettes or Spotify. No, we were putting the needle on the record and lining it up for the start of the song. So and of course we had the partner skate and the speed skate with that song by Popcorn. I think it's called Popcorn. And then at the end of the night, everybody takes their skates off and they have a running race around the ice skating rink, which was a lot of fun as well. Gordon's nodding his head. I think he did that. He probably won. Anyway, right, we are out of time. This has been a lot of fun, Simon, and to tell you the truth, there have been a truckload of people watching, so that's very nice. I don't know whether we should do it again. I thought maybe we should sort of say, look, people, if you want us to do this again, we have staff meetings at midday on Mondays, and if by some miracle KFC turns up for the staff, then we'll reconsider it. Is that a fair deal?
Might need a wide-angle lens if that happens too often.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Is your dad watching this, Simon?
No, and unfortunately,
he's at the final stages.
Not. He would love to. He has followed my political career. I saw him tonight, and one of his first things to me, he said, "Oh, I see in the paper you've been spied on by a foreign government." It's like, yeah, well, you keep it up. This is good. Thanks, Dad. But no, he's pretty serious stroke, I'm afraid to say. So,
right. Okay. Well, we'll encourage people to pray for him just in these final days and a sense of peace. So, Simon, it's all good, always good. And we'll see you on Saturday morning for that excellent conference that's going to happen in Wellington. And we'll report back on that when we catch up on Monday, and Straight Talk on Monday night. And of course, your show next Tuesday morning. You got any topics for your 8 a.m.? Gee, I can't believe it. It's 8 a.m. How did I approve that? Who's up at 8 a.m.?
No, nothing yet. It's funny. I very much make the decision that night before or the morning. What are the most up-to-date issues? But really importantly to viewers here tonight, Solid Ground works with your interaction. It's about you asking what's important to you. As you can see, Bob and I could talk for hours.
Yep. I know.
It's what you guys want to talk about. So make sure you tune in and let me know your questions.
And the problem is that I'm going to go home now and my family are going to want to talk to me and expect me to listen and talk back. And I'm kind of like all talked out because I've used all my words for the day. So I'm stuffed. Yeah. Okay. All good, Simon.
I'm not. Rachel's got to put up with me knowing that I just won't stop talking.
You're wound up. Okay. Viewers, thank you for watching. We will be back on Monday night for Straight Talk with the panel. Until then, you have a great night.